This is a story of how I got involved with Sister Frida and the School of Nursing. It's called The Impossible Dream, and it's by me, Eithne Keegan. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path. This life verse of mine took on new clarity when on my first mission trip to Africa 8 years ago, I met Sister Frida Robinson. Sister Frida, as she is called, is a Kenyan woman and a nurse who refuses to accept defeat. Dismissing the advice that nothing can be done for poverty-stricken people, she humbly trusts the Lord day by day for His provision for the 30-bed hospital, clinic and feeding programs for dozens of children God has put under her care in the town of Kitale, Kenya. After we met, we quickly bonded as she shared her vision for building a nursing school and a teaching hospital to train medical personnel to help meet the needs in Africa. This College of Nursing was envisioned to be a faith-based Christian college that would produce not only nurses with hearts of compassion and hands of care, using the healing model of Jesus Christ as its guide, but a college that will also encourage students to bathe in the living waters of God's Word. It seemed a daunting task, an impossible dream. Today I know that God directed my path. 8 years ago, on my first scheduled mission trip, I was headed for Goma in the Congo. 4 days before our departure, the trip was cancelled because of tribal unrest, which made the area unsafe. I was devastated and spoke with my mentor, Pastor Steve. He suggested I go to Kitale instead and work with Sister Frida. She's someone you need to meet, he added. I will arrange all the details if you decide to go. With much trepidation, I determined to take the plunge and follow God's call. How many are going, I wanted to know. He answered gently, it's just you. My heart skipped a beat, but he reassured me he would take care of all the details. At the time, I was a brand new Christian, and this walking by faith was new to me. When I arrived in Nairobi with my bags and medical supplies, I was picked up by a taxi driver who had my name printed on a piece of paper. He took me to River Road. I'm dropping you off here, he announced, and you will take the Akamba bus to Kitale. Are you staying with me? I was sure he would, but instead he said no. I have to go back and pick up other passengers. There were 2 buses at the station, none headed for Kitale. How long before my bus leaves? I asked the cabbie. It'll be along shortly, he said, and left. I looked around me. There was no place to sit down, no restrooms. I was surrounded by vagrants, homeless people and glue-sniffing children. Here I was, the only white woman with several pieces of luggage, stuck in the slums of Nairobi waiting for a bus. Anxious, I decided it was time to pray. Miraculously, after about 2 minutes, a weight was lifted off my shoulders, and I felt as though angels were protecting me. I chatted with the children around me and felt at ease. It wasn't till later I found out that this was one of the most dangerous places in Nairobi. After 2.5-hour wait, I boarded my bus, a vehicle with holes in the floor. This, I thought, is poverty. Little did I know that in the years to come my eyes would be open to the extremes of abject poverty in Africa. We traveled through the Rift Valley, a huge, almost 4,000-mile stretch from Syria in the Middle East to Mozambique in East Africa. As the bus lumbered along, I looked out over the vast plains of the valley and saw people farming in the fields, eking out a living. I asked God, how could I ever make a dent in this impoverished, beautiful land? It was then I heard His still, small voice. My child, I will test your faith. Do what is possible, what lies within your limits. Then I, God, will do what is outside your limits, the impossible. That was the day I met Sister Frida. Sister Frida's husband, Richard, I learned, had initially bought a farm property in 1994. They grew corn, coffee, and other beans. It also had an orchard and an area for dairy farming with pigs, chicken, and sheep. These animals and crops help sustain some of the work that Sister Frida does. Some 120 children from impoverished areas arrive every day and are fed 3 meals. There's also a preschool for children, and a number of orphans are housed in dorms. Eventually, a small clinic was built and then a 30-bed hospital. On subsequent return visits to Kenya, I met several other people who had joined Sister Frida's vision for a school of nursing in Kitale. Meetings were held, permits and papers obtained, finances considered, and as is usual when planning something new, a host of other details emerged as we began to seriously consider this enormous project. 3 years ago, I started to work on a curriculum. I had never done this before and realized this curriculum had to be adapted to fit the African culture rather than our American healthcare system. I went to Tenwick Hospital, a division of World Gospel Mission, and elicited the help of the Director of Nurses, Mary Hermes. She's an amazing woman of God. Mary mentored me and gave me a rough outline to start with. Later I did research at Kijabi School of Nursing, which is part of African Inland Mission, Ortum Hospital, a Catholic hospital in Pokot, and a number of other facilities to help bring our vision to fruition. The entire nursing college vision proved to be a long, difficult, and complicated road. Many days I felt like throwing up my hands in despair. God, I can't do this. Again and again I would hear his gentle voice, "Have faith. Do not give up. I will see you through." So I plodded along. Finally, after I completed our philosophy statement and our mission statement, I could see a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. Some of the things we knew we needed were items for the skills lab. They are very expensive and included an anatomical skeleton and at least 2 mannequins for teaching as well as lab supplies. God was faithful yet again. God came through with many donors who covered my airline tickets and expenses and allowed me to buy all the needed textbooks. Mission Hospital Laguna Beach donated through Sister Martha Ann Fitzpatrick and Mike Kohler a significant amount of medical equipment for the School of Nursing. On May 2, 2010, I arrived at the Mayfield Guest House in Nairobi and met with Sister Cecilia. Most RNs outside the U.S. are called Sister, who is to be my right hand in the future. We had met 2 years earlier and I had asked her to be the principal of our new college. Now I was to spend 3 days with her to get things organized for the school, to be accredited and licensed. I assumed she had made all the arrangements with the Kenyan Nursing Council for us to meet. However, in Africa, many things are done by impromptu visits. I have learned through the years not to get anxious about these issues, but in faith pray about everything. The day after my arrival, we headed towards the Kenyan Nursing Council. We tried the Standards of Ethics office, the Registrar's office, and the Policymaker's office. There was no one there. I said to Sister Cecilia, "Let's step outside and pray about this." We did, and walked back inside to the desk to try and make appointments for the next day. "Hold on a minute, let me check something," the receptionist said. She made a few calls and then announced that the registrar, the head of Standards and Ethics, and the head of the Education Department, all three, the policymakers and accreditation leaders, would be able to see us in 30 minutes. We just stood there in awe as we saw God in this miracle. Meanwhile, the college on farmland property just behind the hospital was nearing completion. There's room for 16 students who will work at the hospital during their 3-year nurse training. The emphasis will be on community health and midwifery, and they will graduate with KRN Diploma of Nursing. May 8, 2010, Zoya College of Nursing. The name was chosen for the name of the river that runs through the area. Was Dedication Day. The festivities started with a rousing gospel choir. The speeches began. When it came time for Mr. Asundwe to speak, I had a little trouble with his heavy accent, but I was sure I heard him say that he was given the authority to give his verbal approval for the accreditation of the Zoya School of Nursing. My heart pounded, my tears flowed. Earlier I had been named Dean of the college. Through modern communication, I can do much from the U.S. After the dedication, Sisters Frida and Cecilia and I met with Mr. Asundwa and we outlined our next steps. And the presence of Dr. Butch has been pivotal in the announcement of the verbal approval on the dedication day. He said Dr. Butch was being affirmed by God for his obedience and following his call to Kitale, Kenya. All too soon the day of my departure came. This is always a sad and emotional time for me. I was sad to leave my old and new friends, but I knew God had done his work in us and we would all be together another day to complete the work he started in us. Sister Frida recently wrote, Eithne, God has always been on our side. I am thankful to have seen him in action to fulfill his impossible dream of the Zoya School of Nursing in Kitale, Kenya.